What crazier story do you need to tell? TLDR, narrowly avoided being sent to prison for 10 to 20 years for several drug crimes, and instead paid minimum fines due to some quick thinking and taking a huge risk late to the party. But, when I was in high school and the few years after, my primary source of income was selling pot. One day I was just hanging out at home with the GF. We went to the Circle K a few houses down, and got some beer. The clerk, who I knew pretty well at this point, asked if he knew where I could get a dub sack. I said sure, and that I'd be back soon. I go home, and forget about it. An hour or two later I'm like, oh shit, remember, weigh it out and go back. He had already given me the money, very important detail for later, so I waited until he had no customers. He came out, and we went around the icebox, just smoking and chatting. I handed him the bag. Now, there was no one around. Empty lot except for this beat up Volvo facing the record store next door. If I had been paying better attention, I may have noticed this Volvo had completely tinted windows, which seemed odd to do on a beat up Volvo. Two men get out of the car and approach us. One tall skinny guy wearing 100% denim and another guy who looks like Dog the Bounty Hunter in a beige sweater. They approach us and ask how we are doing. Me and Clark look at each other like, you know these guys? Then all of a sudden, the flash badges and yell PD. You're under arrest. And cuff us, separate us, and search us. Beige Dog goes through my texts, finds a couple dubious ones, a few crumpled up 20s, starts trying to get me to admit to doing a lot of business today blah blah. Then they surprise me by walking me and my GF back to my porch, saying they've seen me come and go quite a bit and just want to make sure you don't have a pound of heroin in there, and they'll just charge me with a misdemeanor. Otherwise, it will be jail and a felony. So here we are, on my front porch, me saying there's no way I will let them in my house and to call my lawyer over and over. At one point, my roommate walks out, says hi, gets in his car and leaves. At this point, Dog explains that, if I don't let him search the house, he's going to park a few squad cars on the lawn, extract everyone from the house, and wait on a warrant, and they will charge everyone in the house with every little thing they find in any room. I now know this is not legal. Then, I was just scared. My roommate that had just left was a total nerd with a great job. Straight edge. Rarely drank and never smoked or anything at all. I was terrified of him losing his job. Unfortunately for me, I had just had an opportunity to get a crop of mushrooms at a steal of a deal. My area was super dried up on mushrooms at the time, so I asked around and basically had all my deals set before I got it. This timing was perfect, because just 30 feet away on the coffee table of my bedroom was 1/4 of a pound of mushrooms, neatly weighted out into ounces and 1/8. Top that with all the pot in there, it wasn't looking pretty. So, I proposed that I'll let one of them in, to search just my bedroom, and be done with it. I knew once I let them in they could do whatever, but I was out of options. Beige Dog agrees. Canadian Tux stays with my GF, who looks terrified, like what the fuck are you doing at me, and Dog the Sweater Hunter enters with me. I lead him upstairs, and walk right past my door, which thank God was closed, and into the straight edge guy's room. Dog completely turns it over, takes out drawers, turns the mattress over, the whole shebang. As he does this, I quietly turn off the computer monitor with a background of my roommate and his GF glaring on it. Guy finds nothing, sticks with his agreement and walks me and my shit-eating grin back downstairs. My GF, probably assuming I'm going to prison for many years, is looking like she's about to die, but I'm just grinning. Guy still faking charged me with a felony. Then they leave. Long story short, paid a lot for a great atty who was friends with the prosecutor. Since no money was seen to be exchanged, the charge was knocked down to deliverance of marijuana. The prosecutor recommended the minimum sentence. I paid an $121 fine, did 80 hours of community center at a local music venue, saw a ton of shows for free, and retired from selling. God, I hope someone reads this. I saved a man's life, and I never saw him again 10 years later. This is still the craziest thing that has ever happened to me. In high school, I worked as a lifeguard at a country club for a few summers to earn some money. It was a cushy gig. It was for country club members only, so a large part of the job was learning people's names and interacting with them. Mostly just saying good morning Mr. Gerety and listening to some generic mumbling about millennials. Well, over the 4th of July weekend, there were more people at the pool than usual. Each member could sign in one guest, and there was a middle-aged man jumping off the diving boards who I hadn't seen before. He was over 6 feet, at least 230 pounds, and was doing gainers off the low dive into the pool to make big splashes to impress his country club member friends. Well, one particular jump he got a running start and slipped off the board at the very end. His momentum was already leaning backwards to do the jump and his body came off the board a few feet and his head rotated backwards and smacked right into the diving board. I can still hear that cracking sound in my mind. I'm sitting 8 feet off the ground in the lifeguard chair at the diving well watching this all go down, and I'm praying that I don't have to do anything, even though I knew shit was about to go down. I didn't see any blood, which was a good sign, but as I watched his body sink down I counted 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000. No movement fac. I blew 3 short tweets on the whistle, the cadence to signal to the other guards that I would need the neck board, and jumped in with my boy making as little of an impact as possible in the water. My lifeguard training took over as I dove down 8 to 9 feet to grab this dude. He was out, just making no movement whatsoever. Like I said, he was a big dude, but he wasn't as heavy in the water as I grabbed him and kicked us both up to the surface. I hoisted him onto the buoy and swam over to the edge, where by now the other guards had stuck the board down into the water. I lined up his limp body with the board as we all worked together to strap him into the board. The other guards pivoted the boards out of the water while I climbed out. I took a half-second look around to a half-dozen shocked faces, and it became clear to me that this was my show. Great. Still obeying my adrenaline-fueled rote memory of my training, I shouted for someone to call an ambulance as I made a decision. I thought he probably had a neck injury. The board he was strapped into is designed to not move his head, so he doesn't further injure his neck or back. But he wasn't visibly breathing, so I had to save his life at whatever cost it took. Or at least that's what my 16-year-old brain decided. So I started chest compressions. What they don't tell you about chest compressions is that you are breaking sheet. You can feel bones and cartilage cracking under your palms. It feels horrible. I still haven't been able to shake that feeling. 1 round of 30, and then I did 2 breaths into his mouth. His head was already titled back a bit from being in the board, so I didn't have to move his neck. After 2 breaths, I went back to chest compressions, and after 5 or 6 a little water leaked out of his mouth. He coughed a few times, and the other guards picked up the board and whisked him away so fast I didn't even know what happened. I rolled over onto the concrete, a tinnitus like ringing in my head, my heart racing, just sitting there taking it in. I went into some trance as my teenage body struggled to deal with what just happened. Start to finish it probably only took about 6 minutes, but it felt like a lifetime of stress and nausea had built up in my body. I was walked over to the guard shack, dried off, and walked up to the country club's nicer member buildings. The manager, who was a friend's dad and had gotten me the job, sat down with me as we talked about what happened. I gave him the basic details, signed some documents, and was sent home for the day. Like I said, I was in some kind of trance and was just operating on autopilot. I'm not sure how much sense I was making at the time, and it took me several hours to process what just happened. I came back for my shift a few days later, and I was told by another lifeguard that the guy was okay. I was thanked profusely by the member who brought him as a guest, but I never saw that guy again. This was still the craziest thing that has ever happened. I'm glad my instincts took over, and I remembered my training. I might not have done everything exactly right, but I tried my best, and at the end of the day he lived through it. I hope that guy's doing okay. This is one longer story, but the coincidence is astounding. I'm from a tiny province in the Philippines who decided to work in Manila right after college way back 2007. I got into a call center and met a lot of friends. Stayed in the company for about 2 years. Graveyard shift wasn't for me. Fast forward to 2013, my widowed mom in the province met through a mutual friend a French guy and they both got interested with each other. They eventually got engaged in 2014 and married soon after, 90df France, so they could move back to France. As they were planning their trip, I posted on social media about possible Filipino connections in France to help my mom transition well. A former colleague of mine in that call center in Manila many years back sent me a message. Told me that she has this Filipina friend, let's call her Alina, who has been living in France for 20 plus years now, and that she may be able to help my mom. So, I told my mom to add Rowena on Facebook and connect with her. They did, and they got into talking. One day my mom was Skyping with her. They were talking about their husbands when my mom pulled out and showed to her a vintage photo of her husband when he was in university. An old photo of him sitting on a couch with his then best friend whom he has not seen since graduating. Career opportunities abroad and no cell phones during that time led to them growing apart. As soon as Rowena saw the photo, she gasped. "That's my husband beside your husband," she said. She then hurriedly went to her office and took out the exact same photo which her husband has kept through the years as well. After a few shocks and tears, two long-lost best friends were able to catch up after nearly 40 years. TLDR, by amazing coincidence, two best friends found each other through their wives. When I was about 10, my family moved from the city to this small, like a few hundred residents, town in northern Australia. We started going to school, and after a few weeks we made friends with the other kids. They kept telling us about this club in town, called the Nature Rangers. The way they described it, it sounded like some off-brand Boy Scouts with camping and hiking and all that. They also said they gathered at their ranger hall on Fridays to have movie nights with popcorn and hot dogs. Me and my younger sister begged our parents to let us join, so on Friday night we got dropped off at the hall. So we lined to go into the hall and all the kids are joking and laughing. They opened the doors and we all start walking in, and the whole mood shifted. All the kids immediately shut up. As I walked in I looked up, and on the walls was all this signs. Sinners must burn, the devil is coming for you. Christ is your only savior. Stuff like that. The one that stood out was this huge mural of Australia engulfed in flames, with only our northern town spared. It was an eye-opener for us city kids. What happened next got weirder. It was something you see in movies about fanticles in the deep south of America. We sang these weird folk songs, listened to fire and brimstone sermons. We had to give our faith to the Lord Jesus. The one song that stuck out years later went, "He's under my feet, he's under my feet, Satan is under my feet." The song was accompanied with a dance we had to learn. Me and my sister were looking at each other like, when is this going to be over? Then after all of that we were ushered outside. The boys and girls were separated. The girls were to stay at the hall, but the boys were off to go with this creepy looking old guy, who they called Brother Joseph. He was getting all the boys to get into his white van to take them for a drive. That's when I knew that enough was enough. I snuck out of the line and silently got my sister and said, "We are going." By this time it was late at night. So we snuck off into the dark. Our home was on the other side of town, so we slowly made our way home, creeping from yard to yard. Every time we saw car lights we hid in trees or bushes. When we got about half a kilometers from home I told my sister to leg it, and we sprinted the whole way home, burst into our house and proceeded to tell our parents the whole thing. They always say they had never seen us so scared. It's a story we laugh about at the time, but at the time it was dodgy as fuck. We lived in that town for another 3 months, and the other kids never mentioned Nature Rangers to us ever again. I did not have a car when I was at uni, which made going out with my friends a bit bothersome. I would constantly stumble home half drunk in the middle of the night or early morning, wait for the first train to leave, and so on. One day I was visiting friends and the only way back home that late, must have been between 1 and 2 in the morning, was a train which followed some godforsaken country route. My stop lay next to a small wood and a castle. Think 13th century Central European castle. I knew the way, because I have played there a lot when I was a kid. You have to follow a trail through some fields, past the stables, where horses are kept, through a wooded patch that dips into a slope, past the woods around the castle, then along a narrow road between 2 fields, past an abandoned gatekeeper's house that looks like a set straight out of a horror movie, until you reach a bridge, where you need to pass underneath to rejoin civilization. There are no lights anywhere. I was still a bit drunk, and I considered just waiting for the next bus, but that would have been hours. It was summer, the weather was nice, and I thought, well, I know this path by heart. Easy peasy. So I started walking. Everything was fine, until I reached the slope. As soon as the terrain dipped, there was zero light. 1 mile left were the woods, completely black. On my right, a hill covered in underbrush completely blocked the moon. I couldn't even see my own feet. There I was, shuffling forward like a complete idiot, only one stray branch away from breaking my ankle. It took me forever to reach the end of the slope. Now, you can imagine what it felt like to stumble in utter darkness in the woods at night. Every sound made me think I was about to get murdered at any moment. It was actually the thought of a former teacher of mine that kept me from panicking. He said that the forest is pretty much the safest place to be at night, because what kind of inept would-be killer would wait for a victim in the middle of nowhere? We'd be more likely to get mugged in a dark alley near the city center. So I tried to be rational. Eventually, the moon reappeared, and I was at least able to see a bit better. I was just walking toward the abandoned house, congratulating myself on my bravery, when, I shit you not, someone jumps out of the woods to my right into my path. It was so quick, I wasn't even able to scream. A faking jogger in full gear. In the middle of the night, in the woods, without light. He just ran along the road ahead of me, as if he had night vision or something. Anyway, I got home unmurdered, swore I'd never do something like that again, and did the same exact thing, minus the jogger, a week later. I honestly wonder how I made it past 30. This happened in either the late 90s or early zeros, so my granddad got jiggy with another woman when he was on holiday once with a lady from Kiribati. Anyway, it produced a child, my aunt. Now several years ago my family decided that we would go and visit her in Kiribati. For those that don't know, it's on the equator. To get there we had to fly from Fiji on a tiny 50-seater twin-prop plane with one toilet at the front. Now being a kid with a lot of food allergies, I had eaten something that didn't quite sit right, mild case of food poisoning if you will. About half an hour into our flight, my stomach gives me that feeling where you know you won't stop what's coming. So I got up and went to the toilet. Halfway up the aisle all hell broke loose. I farted, which wasn't a fart. It was the beginnings of full-blown diarrhea. By the time I got into the toilet and locked the door, my undies were soaked. It was still flowing. I couldn't stop it. Now I was a good kid, so I didn't want to block the toilet. So I threw my undies in the rubbish and unloaded into the toilet. However, the amount that came out plus the amount of paper I had to use ended up blocking the toilet anyway, and it stunk really badly. I would have been in there for a good 15 minutes. Meanwhile the entire plane started stinking of shit. I finished up and cleaned up best I could, but the toilet was done for. It was starting to overflow. I just slowly went back to my seat with the entire plane staring at me. Disclaimer, back in the day there was a small amount of water with chemicals to flush with, much more than there is today. A blocked opening means there's nowhere for the poo to go, and no vacuum to suck the shit down, because it's blocked. The more you press the lever the more chemicals, been saying water as it was faster to type, get pumped in. With the toilet blocked, there's nowhere for it to go except overflow. Now imagine the amount of paper I had to use to block an airplane toilet, and that's why it was blocked. Asterisk, I had to tell my dad what I had done, and he spoke to the flight attendants who had to try clear the mess of a toilet with the water starting to splash onto the floor. It was horrible. We finally got to Kiribati and the plane had to be grounded while they disinfected and cleaned the whole plane as it started to sweat. As soon as the heat from outside came in, the plane was delayed for a good while. I only remember this as my dad brought it up the other day in convo. He thought I put my undies in the toilet which blocked it. I had to assure him it was all TP and sheet TLDR sheet myself on a plane and made it get delayed. There was a kid I knew in primary school. I guess I'd call him a friend of mine, but honestly he was kinda insane, and depending on who you asked, I'm sure some of the teachers would have told you he was bullying me. I got into quite a lot of trouble with him. Well, actually, technically it was mostly him who was getting into trouble, but I ended up in the principal's office so many times having to explain the crazy shit he and I used to get up. On the one hand, he had a crazy vivid imagination. He'd spend lunchtime running around the school grounds pretending to be in the thick of a battle in WW2 against the Germans, getting into epic firefights etc. But he would get so into it, it was contagious, and I couldn't help but join in. He'd lead me into his imaginary fray, shouting move move move, grenade, get down, private. Then suddenly at a moment's notice he'd drop down to the ground and start crawling commando style through some shrubs with the most intense look on his face. And he had this crazy ability to construct very impressive little bases, basically huts/tents, in the forest, mostly out of twigs, dead leaves and other stuff he'd just find laying on the ground. Try as I might, I could never build them as well as him. Hanging out with him was always an adventure, because when he got into something he was so into it, and I couldn't help but just join in and have a good time. On the other hand, he also wore steel cap boots to school, would repeatedly remind me that he was wearing steel cap boots, and would kick me in the shins with them to demonstrate. Pretty sure I came home with bruises on my legs multiple times. Pulled a box cutter on me one day on school grounds, would have random outbursts of extremely aggressive behavior, such as pushing me up against a wall, red-faced and furious, and looking like he was about to lay into me, unprovoked. Despite his sudden and frequent mood swings, he was actually a fun kid to hang out with a lot of the time. I'd hang out with him after school, and honestly I think his mum was happy to see that he'd made a friend, because he tended to push other kids away with his behavior. The lunchtime war roller play was always a blast, and it was great fun building stuff out of sticks in the bush, just because he got so into everything he did, and it was contagious. Joining in was always a blast. I ended up in the principal's office so often to resolve disputes between us. The principal would often ask why I continued to be friends with the guy. Honestly, my friendship with this kid gave me a little bit of an insight into how abusive relationships might form, and how people can end up feeling trapped in them and keep coming back despite their better judgment. He moved to another state after 6th grade and I never saw him again. He did send me one letter about a month after moving though. Apparently he wrote it at his school athletics carnival. Told me how he missed hanging out with me and was gushing about how much fun he was having competing in the events. He wrote that he had just come third in the 100-meter race and was currently coming second in the 200-meter race. What the fuck? I wrote back to him, but he never replied after that. This story needs some context to understand the full surrealism I felt. I come from a fairly sheltered life from a very small, mostly apostolic Christian town. I'm not apostolic. Well, in about 8th grade my parents divorced and my mom moved to a slightly bigger city, and I started to make friends that weren't as PG as I was used to. During my first house party the summer of 8th grade I met this guy named Punk Rock Rob. This is an aside, but he had a habit of slinging his disc out, which to this day dude had the biggest schlog I've ever seen. It was cartoonishly big. Fast forward a couple months and me and one of my friends were going to sneak over to a girl's house and stay the night. Well, her parents caught us sneaking in and of course kicked us out. So we are out in the city in winter with nowhere to go. We couldn't call our parents because we did the whole trope of telling them we were staying at the other's house. It was about that time that we remembered Punk Rock Rob, who was quite a bit older, worked at the Jimmy John's down the road. So we go there and are going to ask for a ride home. Well, he invites us to go to an even bigger city to his friend's house to party. Remember, I'm from a small town, so the idea of going to the city was exciting. He proceeds to drive us into the ghetto to his friend's house, where I proceed to have the craziest night of my life. Apparently, unbeknownst to us kids, Punk Rock Rob belongs to a gang of white supremacists. This immediately made me uncomfortable, but I didn't have a choice but to go with it, because Punk Rock Rob was our ride. We were stuck there. They proceed to make us drink more than I have ever drunk before or since that day. They are in the middle of the hood yell singing that song from American History X that the guy in the ice cream truck is singing in the middle of the hood. I got chased around the hood with a taser that night. One of them stole my shoes. We pass out in this random house. When we wake up, Punk Rock Rob is gone. So we are in this neo-Nazi stranger's house, no way home. I was supposed to be home in a few hours to go with my family to get my picture with Santa. That should give you an idea of how sheltered I was vs what I just experienced. I thought I was going to have to call my very Christian mom to come pick us up from a neo-Nazi gang hangout in the middle of the hood. Luckily one of our other friends who could drive agreed to come pick us up, and that situation was avoided, but that was one of the most life-changing nights of my life in terms of how I perceived the world. Most terrible / surreal night of my life. When I was 22 I had an internship for the Buffalo Wild Wings marketing department. I was also running a lot at this time. Every time I would go and leave for a run I would text my GF that I'm leaving for a run just so someone knows where I am. I get a text from her mid-run asking for a special picture when I get back. I agree. Then I get a text from my female boss making sure I sent out some paperwork, which I did. I get home, and I don't even want to take this stupid faking picture, I just want to shower. But I get butt as naked and take a bathroom mirror selfie from head to kneecap and send it with a kiss face emoji. An hour later I get a text from my GF that says, "Did you forget my special picture?" And I'm thinking no, what the fuck, I sent that. So I go into my texts and, oh no, oh fuck me into oblivion. No, I sent the nude to my boss. My heart sank straight into hell. I immediately try to do damage control and say it was not meant for her and that I'm so sorry. I even screenshotted the convo from my GF to show it was a mistake. No response. Went into the office the next day and was called into hours where I was fired. Sheet faking sucked. I had a great gig going. Makes for a great story though. Edit. Didn't expect this to blow up, but I see people arguing about whether or not she should have fired me. I don't blame her for it, mainly because of the 1 hour span between the text and my apology. By the time I responded it made it seem like I was saying it was an accident because I didn't get a positive response. But I have some contacts that are friends with her, and I guess she felt terrible afterwards. She cried after I was fired. She thought the pic was for her at first, so told ours, but only saw my follow-up texts after it was too late. I just wish she would have known I'm not that kind of person and would have asked if that was a mistake. I was always extremely professional around her. So for me to go from professional to sending a full body nude with a kissy face would not only be ballsy as fuck, but also put my job on the line. I would think she would realize that's not who I am. But it's over. No hard feelings. While playing video games, I met this guy who I found pretty charming. He added me as a friend, and for the next few weeks we would play late into the night, chatting on Discord, cracking jokes, and generally getting along great. We talk about our lives, and how I'm in college and he's in HVAC training. He eventually asks me to be his girlfriend. Since he lived on the East Coast and I on the West, we maintained a blissful long-distance relationship, playing games and sending nudes. While we are chatting one night, out of nowhere, he drops it on me that he's 16 years old at the time. I'm 18, so it's not illegal or anything, but had I known in the first place, I likely wouldn't have agreed to date him. However, I stayed in the relationship. From what he told me, his home situation wasn't that great. He had divorced parents who were somehow both strict and neglectful. He starts talking about how he wants to run away and come live with me and start a new life without a shred of doubt. I blindly follow this 16-year-old I've been dating for 2 months. I spend all my birthday money on a plane ticket for him. He plans to have a coworker sneak him to the airport late in the night. We plan for him to live in my 15x15 dorm with me. Somehow, we managed to get him on a plane from Pennsylvania to Oregon. While he's on the flight, I get a call from a police officer from Pennsylvania, who informs me it's a felony to transport a minor across state lines without parents' consent. I narc on him real hard. The second the plane lands in Oregon, he gets escorted off the plane by the police and sent to juvenile detention until his parents can fly out and come get him. And that's how I kidnapped my underage boyfriend. Hindsight is 20/20, right? Late one night my friends and I decided to go buy some weed. These are some of my nerdier friends. We met playing video games online and we'd play D&D together a lot that summer. So this was a little out of the ordinary for our usual hangout plans. This was also before it was legalized in my state, but I was in high school and we were bored. So the three of us hop in the car and manage to get a hold of my friend's weed guy, a guy he's met like twice, who tells us to meet at a Taco Bell in a town over. So we go, and the Taco Bell is pretty empty at this hour, 10 PM. Suburbia. We get some Taco Bell freezers and wait for the guy. He shows and we very cleanly head to the car, do the exchange, and split. Easy. So weed guy goes in to eat and we bounce. We're excited because we're in high school and this is pretty new to us. So we pull out of the parking lot and my friend merges into the turning lane at the intersection just outside the shopping center at the last second. He forgot we were supposed to turn, so now we are at a 45-degree angle, half in the turning lane, half not, but it's completely empty, so he decides to just make the left turn, even though the light is red through the intersection. Lights. Sirens. My other friend is swearing at the driver for being such an idiot, and I'm sitting here thinking no way this is happening. We hadn't smoked anything yet, but the weed smell, even in the bag, was potent and I could smell it faintly. My life is flashing before me as we pull over, and the driver quickly hands my other friend the weed. Passenger friend wraps it in a rag and throws it in the glove compartment. As I sit there trying to think our way out of this from the backseat, the cop walks up, shining her flashlight, and she asks the driver if he knows why he was pulled over. Yes, and that it was illegal. Yes. He tells her he thought it was dangerous to be in that position in the intersection and he naively thought it would be fine to turn with no one around that late in the evening. Then out of the blue she looks at us and says, "Your eyes are looking awful red." I think we all collectively crap bricks. Even though we weren't high, this wasn't looking so good. Suddenly, did she know we had just bought weed? I had to think yes, and that she was taking the place out. So she leans in the car and flashes me with her light. "Why are your eyes red? Have you boys been smoking?" No, we all reply. My friend offers to go with her and be blood tested if she really thinks we have been. Skeptical, she pauses for a long while, then returns to her car. We have no idea what's going to happen and why she left abruptly. She comes back and asks us what we are doing in X town when his car is registered to Y City. He hastily describes us going to visit some friends and grabbing some Taco Bell before leaving to go home. This seems to satisfy her, and then she asks for my friend's license and registration. He leans across the center console to open the glove box. The glove box with a huge rag covered weed bag inside. He starts trying to find the registration, fishing around the weed wad, and the cop is standing by the window, flashlight still beaming in on us. I keep waiting for her to ask what's in the rag, or why he doesn't just take it out and find the papers. I know though that as soon as that bag left the compartment it would start to smell. But my friend is actually doing a great job. It's around here somewhere, playing it super cool while pulling out the wrong papers and returning his hand to fish around. My heart is racing. Finally he finds it. She checks the license, registration, tells us not to do that maneuver ever again, and we go drive off. We were not the type to go and do this shit, so we just nervously laughed our way home. My friend in the passenger seat decided he never wanted to deal with bullshit like that again and got his weed card shortly after. So I almost got arrested for drug possession my first time buying weed with my best nerdy friends, and that was some wild cheat for a Thursday night. There's a fair chance I'll regret putting this on my main account, but here goes 100% true. I swear to God. The worst shit I've ever taken. When I was in the army, a friend and I went out and grabbed some pizza, and it was the best pizza I've ever had, at least until that point. I ate a whole pie by myself. My buddy is supposed to meet up with some girl online who has a friend that is interested in me as well. Things are looking good, but then they say that they can't hang out in town and ask if we can just follow them back to their place because it's only 20 minutes away. We are young and dumb and full of it, so we say yes and start driving into the hollows of Kentucky. About an hour goes by and they pull over. One of the ladies, the one that I was supposed to be paired with, just goes to the back of her truck and pisses for God and all to see. Turns out, it wasn't a deal breaker. All I can think of is that I also need to piss badly. So I get out of my car, get to the back, and try to piss, but I just can't. Like I'm trying, but nothing will come out. I feel like Tom Hanks in The Green Mile. It hurts like it's never hurt before, and after a minute or 5, I get back in the car, defeated. We keep following them another 30 minutes, until we get to their house. Their roommate is a fabulous drag queen. A legit one. They were curling a giant beehive wig and trying out a few makeup techniques before a show. At this point, all I can think about is having to piss and also the sudden need to sheet. I go into the bathroom and take what I know to be the biggest sheet I'll ever take in my life. It's like wet cement, and it absolutely fills the bowl, several inches above the water line, which was just gone at this point. That's when the piss comes. Apparently, my sheet was so massive that it was pinching off my piss tubes when I tried before, and now that the women and children were evacuated, it was time to get to the lifeboats. I just pissed into the massive pile, and it was not unlike when you make the mashed potato volcano and put the gravy lava in it. I did my best to wipe, knowing it would be a pick victory, and knowing that, if I did flush, their home would be ruined. At this point, I hear a commotion from outside the door, as my friend had apparently started negotiations for a three-way and the talks had gone sour. I hear "get out of my house" and I realize that we've been given salvation. I go outside, grab my coat, and say "let's go dude, now," and he agrees. We get into my car, start it up, and suddenly their drag queen roommate sprints out of the front door yelling "what the hell did you do to our toilet? Oh my god," and I just peel off into the night laughing my now empty ears off. It was a pretty wild night. It was around 1996 to 97. I was 14 to 15 living in a small town in Minnesota. Me and my group of friends had been smoking weed for a few years at this point. One day a close friend says he knows where there is a field of weed growing on a farm near where we lived. At the time we were super into Cheech and Chong movies and the prospect of finding a weed field was just too tempting to pass up. We weren't planning on stealing it all. We really wanted to see a field of weed and grab a few buds on the trip. We wait until the weekend and head out to the farm. It's me and two other guys. My friend who told me about it, and my girlfriend's little brother. He was a year younger than us. My friend's name started with a D and my girlfriend's younger brother's name started with a B. We passed the long driveway of the farm and parked the car on the road. We began walking towards the cornfields and barn. I'll do my best to describe the lay of the land as it's helpful to the story. The house sat maybe 30 to 40 feet back from the main road. The driveway was on the right of the house and continued all the way back to a barn that was maybe a half a mile off the main road. Between the house and the barn is a cornfield. As we get closer to the barn and just past the corn we find a patch of cut/chopped up weed plants on the ground. But it's not buds, it's stems, stalks, and fan leaves. It looks like someone recently had just mowed over the plants. So we start to think maybe they're drying the plants in the barn. This is a 2-story barn that looks out over the cornfield. We enter the barn, and there's nothing but a tractor and old farm equipment on the first level. We were all being quiet and searching on our own. So I go up the stairs to the second level. As I'm searching the second level of the barn I look out the front of the barn and see a pickup truck barreling down the drive from the house to the barn. I yell out "run." I knew I didn't have the time to go all the way down the stairs, so I just ran and jumped out the side of the barn. The second level had a large opening on one side. I remember being in the air for much longer than I had ever been before. When I hit the ground I was already falling forward and just naturally went into a roll. As I got up to run I could feel pain and stinging in my legs from the jump. I run for the cornfields and I hear D and B hit the ground behind me. We were split up when we went into the cornfields, so at that point we were on our own. Suddenly the truck passes the barn and takes a hard left into the cornfields trying to run us over. The truck made a few passes, circled around a bit, and went back to the house. We regrouped after the truck left and walked back to the car. When we got back to the car the police were there waiting. I had left a growing guide on the floor of the car and the cop saw it while he was waiting for us to get back. They questioned us as to why we were there. I think we said something about some bike trails we were looking for. They let us go with a trespassing warning. I'll never forget that day and the feeling of flying out of the second story of that barn. I wish I knew how high it actually was. I'm 37 now and still good friends with D. This is a story about Ron. When I was in college I was a big stoner, still kinda am. The campus was close to Philadelphia and decided one day I'd go into the city, do a little exploring, get a haircut, and do all of this stoned as shit. So after a bit of exploring, I decide to go home cause it's getting late and the subway's close. I'm lost and I don't know how to navigate where I am and how to get where I need to be. I ask someone for help to point me in the right direction. This is where the fun begins. I ask this random dude who looks native, comfortable. He was a black man, wearing a hat and a hoodie, about 5 feet 10, 32 years of age. He told me follow him, he's going that way too. I said alright and kept up. When we spoke he introduced himself as Ron. I said back quote Ron. He said back quote no, Ron like Goran. I was like oh okay. And we kept on going. As we took the subway he told me how he was going to school for it. I shared with him, I was going for communication, and he thought that was chill. When we got close to my stop he asked where I was getting out. I told him. He said he was jetting out the same place. Then it got weird when he was asking about going to a party with me. He told me how old he was, and it was pretty visible he was old. I figured this dude did my solid, why don't I do him one? I said I'll see what I can do. When we get out he bowed me a tall boy and then said he had to make a call. Then we wait for a bit and this black car pulls up. He tells me to wait and he gets in the back seat. There's an argument before he gets out and kicks the lady who was in the seat next to him repeatedly, and then he slams the door and yells beach. I'm a little sketched at this point, so we sit on a stoop while we drink our beers and he's catcalling girls my age that pass by. It's at this point where I really contemplate going further. I figured he couldn't be all bad. Yeah, he just kicked a lady repeatedly, but he helped me. I owe him. I take him to school and I sign him in. If he were to cause any destruction or damage it's on me. I go into my room and I off bud. We go and smoke and he throws down and everything. Then I decide I'll introduce him to my friends. When they meet him they flip and just stare at him and then at me and then at each other. Rams like back quote where the party at? The whole night. I'm like I'm not bringing this guy to a party, fuck that. I say goodbye to my friends and we go to my room. We chill for a bit then he sees my computer and offers to help me out get rid of bugs. I'm like sure whatever, it don't work right. He actually helped me out and just cleaned shit up. Then asked where the party was at. I figured it was goodbye for on. We signed out and I feigned going down back quote party avenues before calling it a night. He said he had a great fucking time and he'll hit me up and if I ever need him hit him up. I was like great, cool. MFW I get back to my friends and they were all scared for my life. It was hilarious, they were so right to be scared. I was being such an idiot and so trusting. I had played it off like an idiot at the time and told them he was chill, but I knew Ran was a little nuts. A few weeks later he calls me, asks me if I wanna hang out. I say no. I get another phone call a few weeks after that and he offers to sell me pills. I politely declined. Edit everything. One time when I was 18 or so, I was having a normal night smoking some weed on my balcony. It's like midnight and I lived in a pretty safe neighborhood, so I figure I'll go outside for a walk before calling it a night. I brought my backpack / camera bag as I usually did at that point in my life. Well, I get to an intersection and this super loud Chevy Silverado pulls up and starts revving the engine. Instinctively I start taking pictures and they start doing a burnout. It was pretty badass. The guy in the passenger seat motions me over into the road and I figure he just wants to see the pictures or say what's up, but the light turns green as soon as I get there, so he yells jump in the truck. I jump into the bed, only to find 3 other people lying down back there, so I lay sideways against the tailgate, which was cool at first, but this truck is as fast as it is loud, so I just knew that at any moment I was going to go rolling out the back. This one dude in the back there reached down and grabbed my hand, so I was probably noticeably concerned. Anyway, it's too loud to hear anything these people are saying, and I can't stick my head up to see anything. So I'm just looking at the street lights fly above me at what had to be 100 plus miles per hour at some points. When we finally come to a stop, I sit up, and we're at a nightclub. Everyone in the truck is super hyped that I'm there, and a guy with an Eastern European accent comes up to me and was like, hey, you're the guy that jumped in the back of the truck. You're faking crazy, man. The other 6 people we are with all have accents I've never heard before, but explained that they're all from Newfoundland and live in the Louisiana now for whatever reason. Unfortunately, I left my wallet at home, so I don't have any money or my ID. I wasn't really expecting to end up at a nightclub after all. So I just hop in line to get in with all these guys, and the Eastern European guy turns around and passes me an ID. This is some 40-year-old partially balding man, and we just happened to come in a similar shade of brown, but it worked well enough to get me in. They bought me drinks and everything. It was a nice time. When we left the club, we ended up in a suburb 20 minutes away where I drank wine at this older woman's home who was a coworker of Fizz and a very drunk Russian man. When we left there, I asked them to just get me as close to where they picked me up as they could, and I'd walk the rest of the way. So I got back in the bed of that truck one last time and watched the lights and street signs above me, seeing I was pretty close to home. The truck does a perfect donut and drifts around a corner, slows down and pulls into a driveway. I sit up to see that we're at the gate of my apartment complex. All these crazy new Fizz lived a couple buildings over, and I never even knew. Never saw those guys again either. Good times. TLDR, jumped in the back of a stranger's truck and snuck into a club with no ID with the help of my crazy neighbors from Newfoundland and a very kind Eastern European man. Late to this thread, and I'm high and on mobile, so excuse any grammar issues. Sometime around my sophomore year of high school, me and my best friend Maximum would ditch class and go smoke weed in some random parking lot or woodsy area. We did this during school, after school, and pretty much any time we weren't working. Well, one day Maximum and I are packed into his sheety little Toyota Corolla, and we're on the prowl for a spot to participate in the ritual of smoking the devil's lettuce. The great thing about Alaska is that there is so many random places that you can go to where no one is going to be around. We decide to pull up to a giant empty gravel lot off of a side road. To give an idea of the lot, it was a large uneven area of gravel with some hills. To get to the spot you have to drive through the woods, and then it opens up. Well, we decide to park several hundred feet from the woods on top of a little hill. We load up Maximum's bong, that he lovingly named Betsy, and start taking some rips out of it, even if it looked like it hadn't been cleaned. Since the dawn of time, we are both a couple of rips deep, and that's when we hear it. Hello, Dan. It was coming from so far away it almost sounded like a whisper, but it started to gradually get louder. Dan, is that you? Dan, are you in there? Me and Maximum both look up, and we see this woman who had to be about 60 to 70 years old. She's absolutely filthy, and I don't think she was wearing shoes. Her hair was grey and matted, and she looked like she had been up for weeks on meth. She was wearing what looked to be the remains of a pink dress with holes and tears throughout. Maxim and I didn't know if we were hallucinating, and we looked at each other high and speechless. I managed to get the first words out and said, we need to get the fuck out of here. We drove back through the woods towards the entrance, and in my high and paranoid mind I was faking terrified that people were going to jump out from the woods. I've only told this story a couple of times because it honestly still scares the shit out of me. I think about it nearly every day, and it happened 5 years ago. I fucking hate it. Some may call me an asshole, but I'm happy with what I've done. While I was working at a hotel as a receptionist, there were various events held there by other companies. 4 stars, nothing unusual. People had a one-night stay along with the event. Everyone came in. People were on their seminars or moving about the place and so on. Nothing unusual. However, during the day a woman, wife, with a few little kids came in asking for a man who was supposed to be accommodated here. So of course I looked up the name and called the room and told him that his wife is waiting for him down at the reception. Yada, yada, yada. He came down, they met up, hugs and kisses and all that stuff. Just like a regular family. Fast forward to after the seminars. Everyone is having a party of course, and most people are getting drunk. Some of course more than others. As people start to leave the party to go to bed, everything starts calming down to silence, except 2 people who are sitting on a couch type thing in the bar area. They're like glued to one another. And as a few minutes pass, the girl starts moaning. It's an empty and completely quiet area, so you could hear someone taking a deep breath, let alone moan. Of course, the guy was fingering this woman. We had cameras all over the hotel, so I could see it right there from the back with my eyes, or from the front via camera. Of course I was irritated, since these people chose in advance who they want to bunk with, and if they want a 2-bed or queen bed apartment, and if they want to fuck so bad, why not just grow a few brain cells and take it to the room? You know, one of the prime functions of hotels, but whatever. After a fairly good amount of time, the two got up and went to the elevator. Thank God, they finally grew a brain, I thought. As they passed me, I recognized the man as the guy who had his wife and kids come in earlier that day. Of course I was just happy to not have to look at the asshole, but as they got in, instead of going up to the rooms, they went down into the basement. And in the basement, there are garages, but more importantly, there is this location where the cameras can't see where they went. After a while, they got back into the elevator and went to the top floor, while neither of them were accommodated there. As I watched the cameras, they didn't get out, and as a receptionist, I had to go check the basement area to make sure everything is okay. There's this one table there and there were 2 sweaty as chic marks on it, so yeah, no doubt. As I got back up, I called the elevator to the reception floor in case someone who's not on their room comes in. As I returned behind the desk, as it opened, the 2 people were just standing there in that awkwardly casual style of when you catch a pair on their first kissing session, looking at me like startled dodo birds. Connecting all of that with the fact marks I found on the table, they were faking in the elevator. After they went back up and then back down again, they got out, went right in front of the hotel, and started faking on the sidewalk. Like, right there by the road. This happened at around 4:05 AM mind you. And to be completely honest, that's when my nerves slipped. Since I knew the guy's name and looks, I made a fake account on Facebook and looked him up. I then managed to find the woman too among her friends by profile picture. Thankfully she looked exactly the same. After that, I went through his available pictures and managed to find a family picture where I recognized his wife, and she was also tagged there. So from that I got onto his wife's account and wrote to her how her husband is cheating on her with that specific woman, and about how I've seen them faking on the sidewalk in front of the hotel, just to give myself alibi in case I needed it. I told one of the 2 managers who came in, and also the coworker who came to exchange the shift with me. They were both fine with it, and while I was asleep, sure enough, the guy came in angry, and the other manager who I didn't tell anything was clueless about this, but the one I told backed me up. He was the good one who I could really trust. The job was the type where for the most part of the higher the position, the lower the brain cell count rule would apply. Either way I got called in and got a stern talking to and a threat of being fired by the oblivious manager, who was then told what I did after the man was dealt with by the other manager. Noon wanted to work on that position, and we had 3 workers there for a while now, while the okay minimum was 4, so I wasn't scared about getting fired. Both the managers were there, and I saw that the good one was just talking out of principle, while the oblivious one was somewhat upset over the entire thing, and even after explaining the entirety of the situation. So yeah, one of my managers is completely fine with cheating like that. I never regretted what I did, and the oblivious manager even questioned me if I aimed to destroy their family. Well, cunts like that don't deserve a family like he has. I met a girl on AIM back in the day, and through a long and involved series of events over the course of about 2 years for the initial developments and 20 years for all of the stories to resolve, we started dating. I introduced her to my friends and we started hanging out at her place to watch movies in the basement before going to the only all-ages rave in the area at the time. Mid-90s, she started to sleep around, and we broke up, but continued hanging out. One of the guys she was hooking up with moved into her basement, so he started coming along with us to the raves. We played Vampire the Masquerade at my dad's office. Then somebody broke into the house of the owner of the club that was hosting the raves and robbed him, then murdered him. Soon after, my dad's office was robbed. One of my best friends was accused of the former robbery and murder, and taken from his home in a massive SWAT raid, and held in prison awaiting arraignment indefinitely, because the only evidence was that he went to parties at the guy's club, and hung out with him now and then, and that someone had accused him of the murder on an online message board. Eventually, the guy who had moved into my ex's basement was caught in a stolen car with a bunch of stolen stuff from my dad's office, and fingerprints from these items connected him directly to the murder. It's likely he was the one who had made the online accusation to throw anyone off of his trail. My friend was released, but the time in prison had done serious damage to him, and the fact that this had all been all over the news for so long, with his release and innocence being relegated to a short paragraph on the third page of one of the local newspapers, meant that he was addicted to hard drugs, had lost contact with all of his friends, had missed out on the final year of high school, and had trouble getting a job or moving out of the projects. The killer is serving life with no parole. The murder was brutal. As I understand it, he was there with 2 other guys he'd convinced to come along, promising them easy money and a lot of it. When the homie Arwana turned out to be there, the other 2 wanted to bail, but he decided to capture the guy and torture him to try and get more money. He injected a bunch of different chemicals into the guy, like Windex and bleach and drain cleaner, and forced him to give up his ATM pin, etc. My friend, who was falsely accused, died of a drug overdose last year. Everyone else has moved on, and I'm pretty sure they rarely think about it all. The girl who was at the center of it all is the only one I haven't had any contact with. The last anyone I know heard from her, she was waiting tables at a BBQ restaurant, but I think she eventually became a missionary. She actually met the killer at a church. She and her family were always very involved in church stuff, and he had a system that he told me about much later, where he would go to churches to pick up inexperienced girls because he said they were easier. Seriously, fuck that guy. I feel really guilty about it all, but I can't even really quantify why I do. I just feel like, in a way, my pursuit of this girl, partying, and my extreme naivete led to 2 deaths. But it is all a little crazy. Basically, the death of the club owner really hit the local electronic music community hard, and it was a thriving scene before that. Ugh. Anyway, for the most part, it was long ago. My girlfriend and I went to a Tenacious D concert for my birthday. Late at night after the show, and a bit of bar hopping, my girlfriend and I were back at the hotel room sleeping off the oil tankers worth of alcohol we had drank that evening. I guess I heard a knock on the door or people in the hallway or something. I was really drunk and groggy when it woke me up, so I don't remember the beginning of this story very clearly. Anyways, I, drunkenly, stumble out of the bed butt ass naked, and go over there to see what the fuss is about. I poked my head out the door and looked left, and I didn't see anything, but apparently the drunk part of my brain said to itself, who cares if it's 5 AM, we need to investigate this further. So I stepped out into the hall, cupping my grundle in one hand, while squinting and using my other hand as a visor, like a grizzled old sailor looking for icebergs from the crow's nest. During this intense staring period, I apparently just let go of the door. Now, at this point, I'm drunk, half asleep, alarmed, and to top it all off I have my balls in my hand. No pants, no phone, no wallet, no watch. At least a few of my brain cells have woken up and begun firing though, because at that point it suddenly kind of dawned on me that I should not be standing naked in a hallway that's connected to the rooms of dozens of strangers. It was at precisely this moment that I heard a thud and a loud click. I'm now locked out of my hotel room at 5 AM, drunker than Cooter Brown, naked as the day I was born. Naturally, panic sets in, but my options are pretty thin at that point. I could bang on the door to wake up my girlfriend, but that would attract a lot of unwanted attention from the other guests at 5 AM. Surely someone would come out of their room to see what the hell is going on, which is coincidentally what got me into this predicament in the first place. However, my other option is to brave the stairwell, or, God forbid, the elevator, and somehow conscript a hotel employee to help me. Neither of these options is likely to leave me with even a shred of dignity, though. I figure, fuck it. If I wake my girlfriend up quick enough, I might be able to get back in my room before anyone sees me. And if not, well, I'm screwed at that point anyways, so let's just bite this bullet and get it over with. I knock quietly on the door, compulsively looking to the left and right all the while for any signs that someone might be coming. No answer. I knock louder and mutter a short prayer to any god who will listen. Still no answer. So I bang on the door instead. No faking. Answer. Damn this woman. I think to myself. Right about then I heard the telltale ding of the elevator doors about to open, So I sprint like Usain faking Bolt to the end of the hallway and practically dive into the stairwell. Luckily, it's deserted. I breathed a quick sigh of relief and gathered as much composure as I could muster. Looking around, I see that there's a service phone, most likely for bellhops and maids and shit, but this is a goddamned emergency as far as I'm concerned, so I pick it up. Somehow in my drunken stupor I manage to get connected to the front desk and try to explain the situation, which went about as well as you can imagine. What? What do you mean? You're naked in the stairwell and you need help? Apologizing profusely all the while, I try to not sound like a psychopath and beg her to have someone drop off a towel in there. She has me go down like 2 flights of stairs, where she's had another employee leave a garment for me, for which I'm immeasurably grateful. This is where my troubles should have ended. But that was not the hand I was dealt. Now I look like I'm late to a toga party, but I wasn't really worried about that. I headed down to the front desk, which is where things get interesting. Like I said earlier, I had no ID, no keys, nothing. And apparently, hotels don't typically give strange naked unidentifiable drunk men the keys to just any room in the hotel. I proceed to get into an argument with the concierge, because let me back into my room you bastard. I'm not the most tactful man on the planet to begin with, and copious amounts of alcohol only served to highlight my lack of negotiating skills. Now I don't remember exactly what happened next here, but it was one of these two things. Either I demanded to use the phone to call the police, because I was furious that they wouldn't let me into a room that I had already paid for, or she threatened to call the police, and I said something like, faking, good, call them. I want them to come here and address this clusterfuck. You know, something classy like that. Anyways, one way or another the police eventually show up, and one officer gets my side of the story, while his partner gets the scoop from the front desk lady. Clearly, I looked like a jackass any way you paint this picture because I'm drunk, naked, and disheveled, but I hadn't hurt anyone or damaged anything, and I did pay for a room that they wouldn't let me into. The police tried banging on the door to wake up my girlfriend, but gave up. After about 10 minutes, she sleeps like a faking rock. They told me they wouldn't arrest me, to which I said, you're goddamned right, I haven't done anything wrong. Or something equally graceful, but they then informed me that there was not much else they could do. They could not force the hotel to let me into my room, which I, slightly more sober at this point, begrudgingly understood and accepted. The younger officer who had questioned me earlier was a pretty cool guy, and we talked about Tenacious D for a minute, and did some obligatory air guitar. Then they left. I shot an icy, contemptful glare at the concierge one last time as I passed her desk, and I looked her dead in the eye, while I grabbed another towel off the pile, before heading back towards the elevators. When I got back up to my room, I knocked one last time for good measure, laughed miserably at the futility of the whole situation, and then resigned myself to my fate. I carefully wrapped myself in the towel I had to make sure that my nutbag wouldn't be exposed to anyone in the hallway, rolled up the other towel into a pillow, and then laid down in front of the door to my room, which was miserably uncomfortable on the rough hotel carpet. Like an hour later, my girlfriend opened the door, woke me up, and was like, oh my god, you idiot. What the fuck are you doing out here? I explained everything, and she just laughed at me. I could not detect any guilt or remorse in her voice. It was like a mad scientist's laugh. Heartless. Good times. Haha. TLDR, went to a Tenacious D concert, got drunk, and for some inexplicable reason left my hotel room while naked, failed to stop the door from locking behind me, ended up sneaking around naked in a hotel stairwell like a scene from a bad Mission Impossible porno, had the cops called on me, and probably showed at least one person my genitals on accident. Also, my girlfriend at the time was an asshole who apparently felt no guilt for being completely unhelpful during the whole debacle, and laughed at me afterwards. Although I don't really blame her for that last part, because the whole thing is hilarious in hindsight. My freshman year of college, I went with a student organization to a conference in Washington, D.C. The conference was, and still is, known for some epic parties over the course of the event, and everyone who was able to go was incredibly excited and hyped. The club wasn't made up of frat guys and party animals, so for many on this trip, this would be among their first big college partying experience. Day 1 of the conference comes to pass, and then we all were going out. Some other chapters of the organization held events, read, keggers, throughout the weekend and the night started there. The upperclassmen were the only chaperones of sorts on this trip, and to their credit, they were actually fairly responsible people, and tried their best to keep 24 or so nerds from calamity. Everyone was fine as we left one hotel party, and went to another, and eventually out to a series of bars. We were all in various stages of drunk, but one guy went way overboard. It was definitely a case of him being a relative novice drinker. At this point in the evening, the group had splintered off amongst a few bars and late night restaurants clustered together in what was some of the best nightlife DC had to offer, probably. On this block there were entrances to bars on the street level, and maybe 6 steps below, at the garden level, was a convenience stores, and next to it a tattoo parlor. As I'm leaving the one bar, I hear a commotion and yelling and see the guy who went way overboard being chased up the stairs by a very angry and very gigantic tattooed guy. Turns out, he had asked the owner of the tattoo shop if he could use the bathroom, and when he was refused, decided to take a leak on the steps leading down to his tattoo parlor. One of the more responsible upperclassmen guys thankfully collected drunk guy, put him in a cab, and sent him back to the hotel, after trying to smooth things over with the still very angry and still very gigantic tattoo shop owner. I was 19 at the time, and went to a beer fest with my brother and his 2 friends. Let's call them Alan and Joe. Alan worked as a liquor rep, and got us free entry, and a legal entry for me, since it was 21 plus only. So at this fest everyone gets a plastic cup with some boxes on it. If you want a beer it's 2 boxes checked. If you want a mixed drink, it's 4 boxes checked. This was done to prevent people driving drunk. However, many of the liquor reps slash salesmen were given stacks and stacks of cups. So my brother took a liking to the bartender that was serving liquor for Alan's brand, and me being a timid 19-year-old didn't want to explore too much in a place I shouldn't have been in, decided to stick with them. We helped her bartend all night, mixing drinks for people, and for ourselves of course. All the meanwhile Alan and Joe are getting super drunk, and trying to take home these 2 girls there. So the fest ends and my brother and I are sober at this point, and we decide it's time to go. Remember those cups? Well, Alan had a box of them, and was drinking all he wanted, and letting Joe do the same. They're pissed drunk, and so are these 2 girls they insist on taking with us in the car. So my brother and I have to round up these 4 incoherent people, to get them into the car. Well, Alan decided to squat outside the car, and take a dump. It gets on the car and I get it on me. I'm upset and irritated with their drunken behavior, but we push on. My brother is driving, because he's the most sober, and is desperately trying to get us home, and get Joe and Alan to ditch these girls. Well, the girls blurts out, "Oh no, we are late for dinner, we have to go now." And the 4 drunk people strong arm my brother into taking them to this restaurant, a very fancy restaurant. What we didn't know was that it was one of these girls' birthday, and we were 4 unexpected guests. We are not only underdressed for this restaurant, but we have 2 boorish drunk men still trying to get into these ladies' pants. My brother and I are making painfully awkward small talk with these people who know nothing about us, or why we are here. We have to recount the whole story for them, and by now we are getting borderline kicked out of the restaurant. Alan is yelling at the waiter to get him another Bud Light, specifically in his flamingo koozie. The waiter is politely refusing to serve him, and he gets yelled at. By now the 2 girls from the fest are sobering up. Alan and Joe go to the bathroom and the birthday girl asks me who those 2 guys are, and why they are here, and why are they such assholes. She then sobs, and cries in front of all her birthday guests. My brother and I notice Alan and Joe are in the bathroom a long time, and decide now is the time to leave. We walk into the bathroom to collect our drunken idiots, and the bathroom is literally covered, every square inch, in paper towels. You couldn't see the floors or the walls. How they manage that in their state is beyond us. We drag them out and make our way to the car, which for some reason was parked at a car dealership's parking lot. We get 30 feet from the car and alarms start blaring along with a recorded message of "You are trespassing," and the police have been called. We scramble to get in the car and drive home. It was incredibly frustrating at the time to deal with all of that, but it's one of the more strange and funny experiences I've had. Sorry this is so long, I've been meaning to write it down for my family history. This Reddit post gave me another reason. Me and my wife, who at the time were pregnant with our son of 4 months, were doing a photo shoot with a photographer in 2014. This was at my wife's family ranch just outside of Fort Worth, Texas. We drove up to the highest point of the ranch on a hill, where there were bluebonnets and cactuses to take the photos. We had parked on the north side of the hill, and walked over the top of the hill towards the bottom on the opposite side, the south side. We were dressed nice and my wife was all dolled up with high heels, which can be pretty immobilizing in Texas ranch land, but make for a cool pic. As we were walking, we noticed some cattle off in the distance towards the east and a single cow alone just 100 yards from the herd. We weren't splitting the herd, just on some high ground a few hundred yards away. There was no cause for concern with the circumstances. My family has a large ranch and I've grown up around cattle, so I'm fully aware of when to be concerned. They were just grazing. We started to take the pictures and everything was going smoothly, and then I noticed that there were now 2 cows off in the distance. It appeared to be a baby, and then I noticed the placenta hanging out the back of the larger cow. At this point the herd had shifted to the area of the mother. We recognized what had just happened, a birth, and decided to move to the other side of the hill out of view of the cattle and back closer towards my Jeep. So the hill was splitting us between the cattle, and we were still on higher ground and closer to my Jeep. There was no cause for concern here either. Cows commonly give birth around ranches and sometimes we even help with the process. Cattle are also more afraid of you and will try to keep a distance if they are not sure of you. We had moved away from their sight and didn't split them from anything. So again, no cause for concern. We started taking pictures again, and about 5 minutes later noticed that the herd had gone from typical grazing and observing to quickly moving up the backside of the hill and were positioned about 40 yards away from us on the tip top of the hill. The Jeep, us, and them were now positioned like a triangle, one at each point. But now they were at an advantage because they were slightly higher on the hill. Any attempt of us to get to the Jeep might appear as a move towards them, and definitely not in the opposite direction. The herd was probably numbering around 80 cattle and started bundling into a group, all looking directly at us. At this point I'm concerned. It's now clear that the herd has full intention to rid us from their area, and if we make a go for the Jeep, it could be seen as an aggressive move. I tell the photographer and my wife to walk slowly towards the Jeep. Do not run. Be calm. Then the photographer takes off running towards the Jeep, which is about 40 yards away, and uphill, and jumps in the car and shuts the door. In like, what the fuck? As the photographer is running to the Jeep, I tell my wife to make a run for it, and she just says, I can't, I'm in heels. My heart sinks. I look around and realize we are in the middle of a giant cactus patch with nowhere to go, and my pregnant wife is hopeless and a herd of cattle look like they are about to stampede and trample us. Then I turn and look at the herd, and they've now positioned themselves closer to the Jeep uphill from us and 30 yards away. They start bunching into a tight group. It was horrific. It's obvious they're about to stampede and trample us. You probably couldn't push your hand in between all 80 of them. They were bunching so tight. All at once the calves, young cows, had moved to the back, and the larger adults moved to the front. They then started to rock back and forth, almost as if they were gathering a collective courage to charge. They would do that for a couple seconds, then start looking like this was the time they were going to take off charging. Just before they would charge, I would start to roll out like a lion or bear and hold my hands out wide. They would move forward a couple feet, then stop and start the process all over again. This was the most terrifying thing I've ever seen. No way you can survive. My wife and unborn son and me, no way. It was terrifying to see them strategically bunch and rock for momentum. Cows kill more people than sharks each year, and I'm sure this is how. If you had a gun, it wouldn't have mattered. A stampede is absolutely terrifying way to die. I suffered some insomnia and nightmares after this, and I firmly believe it was from watching them bunch and rock, not from what happened next. So I would roar, and they would stop, then repeat. Each time they attempted to take off, it looked like they actually would. At this point I knew eventually they were going to charge and trample us to death. So I started walking up the hill towards them in an attempt to separate me from wife, in the hopes that they would trample me and consider the threat over with and leave. As I started walking towards them, they all froze, not one bit of movement. All of a sudden, splitting from the back middle of the herd straight out of the front, came the bull running down the hill fast and straight at me with his head down just like in the movies. Very large and pissed. I didn't see him prior *. My thoughts were, I'm actually slightly relieved it's not a herd of 80, it's one. One is survivable. So now I should become a distraction to separate him from my wife. I did as only an ex-Texas college football knows, square him up and put your shoulder into him football style. Literally lol. I had no clue what to do, so that's what I did. I charged him lol. I dropped my shoulder and met him head on about 15 to 20 feet away. I put my shoulder right in between his eyes. Right before we contacted, I remember his head seemed as big as Roman shield from the movies and his face felt as hard as concrete. He stopped me dead in my tracks and threw me all the way backwards above my wife's head into the cactus pit. My body knocking down my wife as I flew. When I impacted the bull, I crushed my shoulder and broke my ribs. My body felt absolutely crushed, and it actually was. And now I was rolling in a massive thick cactus patch. He wasn't done though. He immediately followed my flailing body into the cactus patch and started pouncing on me with his hoofs and pushing downward on my body with his head. I remember thinking, if he keeps pushing down on me with one more pound, I'm going to die from being crushed. I remember making an odd high-pitched squeak for a brief second from all the pressure. It didn't sound healthy. His head moved left to right, adding to the pressure and pushing me deeper into the cactuses. He did that for a few seconds, throwing and smashing me around the cactus patch. Then all of a sudden he started to retreat to the herd. At this point I'm wondering if he's done, and I feel injured, but not incapable of moving. I knew from experience through football that if you're injured, you get up and move around immediately to delay swelling or stiffness and almost ignore the injury, and it can buy you a minute or so. It's a silly trick, but it works, and in a bad situation it can save your life. I then look at the cow running back towards the herd and then at my wife, who is practically sitting on a cactus. I see this as an opportunity, as the cattle even seem a little shocked, like shocked thinking, is he going to get up? I see this as an opportunity. I get up, run and grab my wife and throw her over my shoulder, which I didn't realize was broken at the time, and started hauling us up the hill in cowboy boots. I get to the Jeep, swing the door open, and my wife says, "No, stop. I'm covered in cactus." I said, "Sorry babe," and tossed her ass in the Jeep. I run around and jump in my door. I start pulling 1 to 2 inch cactuses out of my hand so I can grab the steering wheel. My plan is to take us to the hospital to get her and the baby checked out and my body looked at. We drove straight to the hospital from the ranch, 30 minutes. By that point the pain had definitely set in. I had broken my shoulder, tore my AC joint, and broke some ribs, cactus needles everywhere. My wife went through her x-rays and everything was fine. The baby was fine as well. I was so grateful. It took about 1 month or so, and I was back to moving around normal. I was pulling cactus out for a year. I pulled one out of the tip of my pinky 3 months later that was 1 inch long. No clue how I was moving my pinky, lol. However, the worst thing after that was the dreams. Every single night for probably 8 months I had very realistic dreams, where I was in some sort of intensive conflict, where I'm an underdog and should die but I don't. Examples: military ambush but I escape. Street gang execution but I escape. I actually got used to the dreams and they were just a part of sleep. Crazy stuff. My wife and I have a beautiful healthy girl now named Shepherd, 2, and my son Wyatt, 4, is as healthy as can be. I've been meaning to write this down so I can have it for the family in the future. I guess this Reddit post gave me another reason to do it. Thanks.